You know what's kinda strange to me? The insistence that everything is simultaneously political and not political. You've heard the phrase, everything is political before, surely. And you've probably heard some progressive justifications as to why that's the case. But then you've probably also heard this, too. When the official Star Wars Twitter account posted a cover for their Pride Month comic centered on two proud, strong queer women, someone replied with, "Don't make Star Wars political." The response from the official account was, "Queer characters existing isn't political." But wait, isn't everything political? Of course, the resulting backlash to the official Star Wars Twitter account shining a spotlight on this guy is pretty much exactly as expected. You know, for a political faction that talks about responsible platforming, use of social media, punching down, a faction that I'm sure the Disney intern running the Star Wars account is a part of, you'd think they'd know not to sick their huge following on a smaller private account. Though, I'm sure they actually knew exactly what would happen. Look at the fucking rage of all these replies. Here's another one, calling all members of the Resistance. Billy Lourd and Kelly Marie Tran are taking the stage now. Respectfully, nobody likes either of them. Respectfully, L plus ratio. Jeez. Maybe the Disney intern is actually Keffals. And the exact same thing happened to this poor bastard, too. Get his ass, get his ass, get their ass. I guess this one's inclusive. Get his ass, get his ass. Yeah, let's go, get their ass. It's often said by leftoids screeching about rightoid YouTubers, or even apolitical YouTubers, that people in positions of influence online have a moral obligation to tilt their audiences towards good behavior, and that the harassment that pours out of right-wing communities reflects on both the politics and the individuals within those communities. If we accept this logic, what does it say about progressive communities, that individuals within them have no problem being grotesquely racist towards black people who aren't progressive? The most important type of reply out of this officially sanctioned Star Wars dogpile, though, are the people who were claiming that Star Wars is actually political. And yes, the leftoid answer is the everything is political position, stemming out of Antonio Gramsci's theory of cultural hegemony, describing how before the working class can revolt against the bourgeoisie, first they must be indoctrinated within an alternate culture that is pro-revolution. The crafting of that culture requires the subversion of mass media to deconstruct morality and heroism for the masses, and within that resulting cultural vacuum, push pro-socialist propaganda. If you want to know why so many new properties are garbage that promote communism and progressivism, while so many reinventions of old properties are simply lessons in how to subvert them, this is why. Star Wars is political because when George Lucas chose to base his stories on the specific hero myths and morals that he did, to a reader of Gramsci, that choice was not a neutral one. It did not exist within a political or cultural vacuum. Rather, it led new generations of people to idolize specific types of heroes. And as those children became politically active adults, the particular cultural morality they grew up with informed their politics.
One of the themes of the movie is high technology and romance. The romantic human, one of the human qualities is that romantic quality, that quality of honor and justice and everything that we equate as human in the way we focus and conduct our lives. In this particular case, I was looking for a symbol of sort of a more humane, honorable way of being a warrior, as opposed to, the mechanical, heartless, machine-like approach to killing and battle and war. One of the main influences here was the samurai ethic and King Arthur and the King Arthur ethic, where you have a very strong set of ethical rules that you live by. The lightsaber became the symbol of that humane way of conducting your life.
In this way, Star Wars is political because the progs view it as a vehicle to influence political change in the next generation. It's not valued by them for the artistry of the thing, but only for its real-world impact. Probably the greatest bulwark against the Gramsciite cultural subversives is literally voting with your wallet. A piece of media that lacks a soul and only exists to enact political or cultural change is generally not of high quality. This is the source of the get woke, go broke phenomenon. But it was identified by George Lucas as an issue long before that phrase became popular.
When Star Wars came out, everybody said, oh, it's a silly movie, it's just a bunch of space battles and stuff. It's not real. There's nothing behind it. And I said, well, there is stuff behind it. It's not just a space battle. There's more to it than that. It's much, much more complicated than that. So the spaceships and that part of the science, fantasy, whatever, got terribly abused. And of course, everybody went out and made spaceship movies. And they were all horrible, and they all lost tons of money. And you say, well, there's more to it than that. You can't just go out and do spaceships.
Notice just how many properties have gone through the process of becoming subversive vehicles for socialist politics. The stripping of initial meaning, co-opting of the aesthetic, and replacing the soul of the thing with a new political message. But their politics are so broken that even in their new offerings, the truth still shines through. Here's an example. One of the best moments in the Obi-Wan show, arguably, was Freck. It's pretty clear that Freck's a good guy. He likes the stability that the Empire's institutions bring to his life. His banter with the stormtroopers serves to humanize them both. Despite the Empire being that totalitarian nightmare state, your average person is just doing their job in a system they can't control, and they're just trying to get on with their lives and do what they think is the right thing. To them, the Empire represents security, order, law, trade, jobs, and a bulwark against the religious zealotry of the Jedi. This dude on Twitter almost gets it. This moment was the most real and scary Star Wars has been in a long time. Yeah, that's the point. Obi-Wan is a wanted man undercover. The symbol of the Empire should serve to frighten him. But the next part of the scene, where Freck and the stormtroopers are humanized, shows us the point. In a different world, these guys would be friends. But then they blow it. That's like having a "Let's Go Brandon" or a "Don't Tread on Me" bumper sticker on a pickup. I mean, just surface level here. Despite some of the problems with libertarianism, the libertarian creed of "Don't tread on me" is still the exact opposite of the Empire's ethics. But there's a bigger issue here. These people are explicitly ignoring the point of the scene, which is humanizing Obi-Wan's enemies before he has to kill them, because they don't accept the idea that their own political opponents should ever be humanized. I know we're digging back into history now, but remember when Ben Shapiro hosted Mean Review on PewDiePie's channel? Or Donald Trump went on Jimmy Kimmel's show? Progressives were screaming bloody murder that these right-leaning people were being humanized, as if they were not already humans. The Prog's rejection of the humanizing moment of this scene shows that they don't actually understand the larger Star Wars conflict. In their evaluation, there's no moral content here, only the symbols of good and evil. If Freck was flying a Pride Month variant of the Empire flag off the truck, and the narrator called the rebellion transphobes or something, while Darth Vader was going around choking out right-wingers, these idiots would do a complete 180 on this shit. They don't want a society free of totalitarianism. They want their ideology to be the one enforced by the totalitarian government. In fact, okay, Star Wars is political. I'm on board. What kind of political is Star Wars? That question is best answered by going back to the source. This line in A New Hope always bothered me.
It just isn't fair. Oh, Biggs is right. I'm never gonna get out of here.
So, most people know that the Biggs that Luke is referencing is this guy who gets blown up during the attack on the Death Star. In the original release of the movie, he appears to be just another rebel pilot. But in the 1997 special edition, George Lucas added back in a deleted scene showing Luke and Biggs reuniting before the battle, where they appear to be old friends who haven't seen each other in a while.
Hey, Luke! Biggs! I don't believe it!
Hey, how are you?
Great.
How's it getting? Hey, you coming up with
I'll
us?
be right up there with you, and have I got stories to tell you?
You sure you can handle this shit?
Sir, Luke is the best bush pilot in the Outer Rim territories.
You'll do all right.
Thank you, sir. I'll try.
I gotta get aboard. We'll hear all your stories when we get back, all right?
Right. Hey, Biggs. I told you I'd make it someday.
It'll be like old times, Luke. They'll never stop us.
Now, the 1997 release was the one that I saw when I was a kid, but even back then, it felt like there was some missing setup for Biggs. And there was. There's a long deleted scene that takes place at Tosche Station, where Luke and his group of friends, including Biggs, use binoculars to watch the fight between the Star Destroyer and the Counselor ship at the beginning of the movie. Afterward, Luke has a pretty interesting conversation with Biggs about the trajectory of both of their lives.
I may never come back, and I just want someone to know.
What are you talking about?
I made some friends at the Academy. When our frigate leaves for one of the central systems, we're gonna jump ship and join the Alliance.
The rebellion?
Quiet down, will you? You got a mouth bigger than a meteor.
I'm quiet.
Listen how quiet I am. You can barely hear me. My friend has a friend on Bestine who might help us make contact.
You're crazy. You could wander around forever trying to find them.
I know it's a long shot, but if I don't find them, I'll do what I can on my own. It's what we always talked about, Luke. I'm not gonna wait around for the Empire to draft me into service. The rebellion is spreading, and I want to be on the side I believe in.
Yeah, meanwhile, I'm stuck here.
You'll get your chance to get off this rock. You're going to the Academy next term, aren't you?
Not likely. I had to cancel my application.
What for?
My uncle needs me.
Oh,
No, I'm serious. The Sand People have been getting really crazy. They've even raided the outskirts of Anchorhead.
come on, Luke. Your uncle could hold off a whole colony of sand people with one blaster.
I know. But we've got almost enough evaporators to make the place pay off. I have to stay one more season. I can't leave him now.
What good's all your uncle's work if the Empire takes it over? You know they've already started to nationalize commerce in the central systems? It won't be long before your uncle's just a tenant, slaving for the greater glory of the Empire.
No, that's not gonna happen here. You said yourself the Empire won't even mess with this old rock.
Things can change.
There's two notable things about this scene. First is that to understand Biggs's role in Luke's life, you kinda need this scene. Luke's later frustration at Biggs's words now makes a lot more sense. Luke's reunion with him at the end of the movie actually carries some weight, and Biggs's death actually means something. I'm guessing these scenes were left out because George Lucas wanted to tightly follow R2-D2 and C-3PO until they joined up with Luke and Obi-Wan.
The first cut of the film had the intercuts of Luke on the planet with what was going on in space. But it just wasn't the movie I wanted to make. I mean, I wanted to make it about this kind of odd couple and tell the story from their point of view.
But man, working them in somehow would have improved the movie quite a bit. But secondly, there's also the political component of Biggs's speech. Biggs states that the Empire has been nationalizing businesses, and that the former owners of those businesses become tenants of the Empire. His dialogue crafts a link between the idea of nationalization and the idea of landlordship, where being a renter is the same as being a government employee, and the thing that links them is the lack of personal ownership. Biggs also makes it sound like it's at least somewhat common for young people to join the Imperial Academy to get training, and then defect the rebellion when they get a chance. Now, the Empire is obviously supposed to be a stand-in for Nazi Germany. The historical stormtroopers, from which the Imperial stormtroopers get their name, were the Brown Shirts, the Nazi Party's paramilitary wing in its early years. Demographically, the Brown Shirts were overwhelmingly young, working-class, communist-aligned men who believed that National Socialism could be an alternate path forward for the socialist movement instead of the Communist International. Nowadays, the idea that fascism is capitalism in decay is one that the left clings to, despite it being resoundingly false. In a more general sense, there was a broad understanding by people of this era that socialism and fascism were feuding brothers, and that each of their reactions to the other made society worse, while it was liberal democracy standing apart from the two, from a totally different political school of thought that truly had an alternative, more constructive path forward. And this can also be seen in the political science writing of this era as well. Before the Soviets had begun infiltrating Western universities with their active measures program, you had papers like, for example, A Premature Fascist, Sorel and Mussolini by James Meisel, which documents the clear ideological progression from the socialism of French syndicalist Georges Sorel to the neo-socialism and later fascism of Benito Mussolini. In fact, this false idea of Lenin's that fascism is capitalism in decay is disproven on the very first page of the book Hitler's Beneficiaries by German historian Götz Ali. Ali describes the efforts of Stuart Elliott Eisenstadt, an American who has spent much of his life negotiating reparations for victims of the Holocaust. Part of Eisenstadt's work involved securing compensation from private German businesses that profited off of Nazi slave labor. Eisenstadt's highly public negotiations with these companies, widely publicized in the media in the 1990s and early 2000s, led to a distorted view of just how complicit German captains of industry were in the horrors of the Nazi regime. The Nazis had no problem pointing their guns and making demands of private owners of business if it meant getting what they want, a fact that first came out during the Nuremberg trials. And while German industry is responsible for what it did, it's also important to recognize how little of a choice the individuals involved had. But that nuance doesn't work very well as a headline, and even back then, headlines are all that people read. So, the idea that fascism is capitalism in decay was ultimately spread by neo-Marxist academics, following the cultural theory of Antonio Gramsci, who successfully dismantled our previous cultural understanding of the links between socialism and fascism as a part of a multi-decade project of Soviet subversion. They then replaced that previous knowledge with a new theory that corporations are themselves fascist, relying on the modern definition of the word corporation, and ignoring the very different definition from the 1920s, when Mussolini was actually writing about the corporative state as part of fascist political theory, and then backed up their new construction by misinterpreting Eisenstadt's good work. With this knowledge, let's return to the cut scenes from Star Wars: A New Hope. Biggs' assertion that nationalization leads to everyone becoming tenants, where nobody truly owns their own means of production in an exclusive individualistic manner, and the collective dictates to the individual what is the greater good for the people. That principle is the handshake between socialism and fascism. Meanwhile, in the Wild West environment that is Tatooine, with all of its many problems, there's still ultimately more freedom there than within the Empire. The small landowners and businessmen who exclusively own property, they're less well off materially than the citizens of the core worlds, but they're free, at least for now. And they want to keep it that way. The rebellion is a liberal, individualistic uprising against a socialist system in decay. And George Lucas wrote that story within the context of a larger cultural backdrop that still understood the natural progression between a socialist revolution and a fascist state. Now, maybe you might say that deleted scenes don't count. They don't really represent what Star Wars is all about because they were, deleted. And so, not only their plot points, but their underlying morals should be disregarded. The problem is, Biggs' speech slots in quite well to what we know about the Empire's economy, as told on screen in The Empire Strikes Back.
So you see, since we're a small operation, We don't fall into the jurisdiction of the Empire.
So you're part of the mining guild then?
No, not actually. Our operation is small enough not to be noticed.
Fascist political theory describes what they called a corporative economy, where guild-like bodies, called corporations, would bring together the managers of government-led business and representatives from nationalized unions to determine how best to implement state policy. In this scene, Lando is expressing gratitude that his business is small enough not to be nationalized in the way that Biggs described, under the jurisdiction of the Mining Guild. And later in the movie, the Empire does actually roll in and take over the business, because Han and Leia's presence shines a spotlight on them. Just like how, in reality, fascists would march into businesses, point guns at them, and tell them that they work for the state now. Now then, because Star Wars is political, we can go back to the original movies, where the broad cultural understanding of the true nature of socialism is still intact, and see that understanding shine through in the narrative. Afterward, we can go to the newest movies, witness the end result of progressive subversion, and notice how all the ethics, all the morals, all the heroism has been entirely flipped on its head, and how that roughly corresponds with the loss of broader political knowledge regarding socialism's true nature. But if a progressive were to hear that analysis about how Star Wars is political, I would be labeled a racist, bigoted, bootlicking chud who is too stupid to understand politics, and I'm taking Star Wars too seriously, and...
Don't ask questions. Just consume product and then get excited for next products.
Yeah, that.